The Tertiary Education Fund, TED Fund, is one of the intervention agencies put in place in the Federal Republic of Nigeria to retool or to rejig the entire educational system at the tertiary level, talking about universities, polytechnics, colleges of education, name it. And it is put in place by an act, TED Fund Act 2011, and basically charged with the responsibility for managing, disbursing, and monitoring the education tax to public tertiary institutions in Nigeria. Well, today we are not going to ask what is the function of tertiary or TED Fund. We're going to say, what are we seeing differently at TED Fund? Because we have a new chief executive there who is barely a year, inching towards 2 years. He's my guest on set on Insight on this segment of the program, Dr. Abdullah Bichi Barfa, Executive Secretary, Tertiary Education Trust Fund. Thanks for joining me on Insight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Beautiful. Like I said, I won't be asking you how you settled in. You're already settled in already.
Absolutely.
And I'll take off from this perspective. In the course of trying to find out a few things, you were quoted precisely on the 24th of August 2017 at saying that TED Fund boss uncovers fraud involving lecturers, agency staff, and precisely they said a high fraud involving some academics and staff of this agency. According by you, the lecturers and staff had abused the intervention funds of the agency on pretext that they were pushing further academic qualification or attending conferences. The development, according to you, violates the terms of approvals the funds were granted to them. To this end, you said you vowed that henceforth violators of the intervention funds would not go without facing a full wrath of the law. Where are we with that case?
That is very correct. You see, when we first came in, there were quite a lot of hiccups here and there. And one of the things that we quickly observed was that one of the intervention line that was put in place for the purpose of human capital development, to build capacity of the academics teaching in our tertiary education institutions to be able to pursue and obtain higher degrees at home and abroad, was really being implemented more or less in many institutions in the breach. Quite a number of scholars were given approval to go and study for a PhD or master's. They've collected the money and they didn't go. Some have collected the money. Instead of going where they were given approval to go, they went somewhere else. Some have collected the money. Instead of going to register for a PhD, they went and registered for another master's degree. What we did was to conduct a comprehensive scholarship auditing. We audited the entire scholarship from its inception in 2008 up to 2016. All the approvals that were granted, all the scholars that ought to have finished, we requested to see the evidence of their completion, a copy of their dissertation, a copy of their certificate. Those that were studying, we requested to see the progress reports of their study. And we were able to identify the gaps. And at the moment, we have already put in an order of return for those that have violated the requirements of this scholarship to refund the money. And in a number of institutions, there are those defaulting scholars that have started refunding the money. Some were quick to quickly rush and run to their countries of study to return and register and start studying. We want you to study. So if you have, is better late than never. If you have decided to run and go and register quickly and start the study, good. But if you are still around, the period has passed, you have collected the money, spent the money, refund the money. So we are really getting them to refund the money. But we are doing this quietly without really rocking the boat. We would want to build this institution. We don't want to destroy them. We don't want them to be in the news for the wrong reasons. We want them to be in the news for good reasons. And that's why we are doing all this quietly. We are making a lot of recoveries from those defaulting
Beyond
scholars.
the fact that you had people who are refunding or reflected back to where they were supposed to be,
yes.
Do you have testimonies of people prosecuted? Quoting from what I just read here.
Well, no prosecution yet, okay. Because we will only prosecute when you refuse to refund. And we will get the beneficiary institutions in the first place to put you through disciplinary process. internal disciplinary process. And if the internal disciplinary process did not yield the result, then we will request them to involve the law enforcement agencies.
Okay. Needless to say, what are you doing differently? From what you're saying, you're already doing something differently.
Absolutely.
But reinforcing from a further comment on you, you described the intervention of TET Fund as the live wire that has sustained the activities of beneficiary institutions.
Yeah.
So far, how far since you became on board? Where are we? Judging from where you met it, the rot you met, the cleansing you're doing, definitely you will have had your own template where you're taking off from. How far?
You see, it is true that there were challenges, and there are still challenges. From the time we came, we were so very lucky that we are operating in a government that is committed to education, that is committed to raising the standard and the quality of education across the spectrum, across the entire education sector, from pre-basic, basic, post-basic, and tertiary. And at the level of our own intervention agency, we being an intervention agency, we are concerned with universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. We support them in certain areas, not in all areas. We support them in certain areas. In those areas that we're supporting them, I would say that in the last 1.5, 2 years that we have been operating, we were able to make huge difference in the quality of intervention, huge difference in the value for money, huge difference in the in our operations, huge difference in our interaction and our relationship with the beneficiary institution and with the entire stakeholder community of the fund. To give you some basic examples, in the quantum of intervention that we do issue to institutions, the institutions have never gotten it so good as this time around. The very first intervention that we have allocated to beneficiary institutions, we treble what was being given to them before, 3 times. And we've just released also the 2017 allocation, and it is also much, much higher than what they used to receive. So in the quantum of the money, although we are having less tax collection because of the general slowdown in the economy, we use education tax, and education tax is paid by companies operating in Nigeria, and is paid from the accessible profits that they have made. So the better the economy, the more profit they make, and the more tax they pay, and the more money we get, and the more money we disburse. So our performance is intricately interwoven with the overall performance of the economy of the country, because it's only when companies are doing well, they will pay more tax. You talked
about 2017 disbursements.
Yes.
What about 2018? When are we having it?
2018, we're going to have them within the second quarter of 2018. We're going to release the allocation letter. Going back to your earlier question, you see, beside the huge quantum, in terms of also human capital development, since we started this intervention, the scholarship, in 2008 to date, about some 22,000 scholars have been trained.
Okay.
But it is but more than about 8,800 have been given scholarship in just the last 2 years. So you can see for 10 years, the total is 22,000. But in 2 years alone, it's about 9,000. So we've almost done half of what was done in 10 years in 2 years.
That's good. That leads me to the next.
Yeah.
Beyond scholarship,
yes,
to boost scholars or academic dons,
that's right,
in the institutions.
Yes.
Essentially, you have provision of essential physical infrastructure,
yeah,
for teaching and learning.
That's right.
Instructional materials and equipment.
Yeah.
Research and publication that we have talked about. No, now, can you give us an update on this? We have talked all about academics now.
That's
in
right.
terms of facilities for the institutions.
For physical infrastructure, you see, in this quarter alone, the first quarter of 2018 alone, we've given approval in principle of more than 250 projects. In these 3 months, January, February, March, we've given more than 250 approvals in principle to beneficiary institutions. Our operation is that when you finish your project proposal defense, Then you make your technical submission. This is the project you want to put in place, Faculty of Engineering, or Department of Mass Communication, or lecture theater, so and so, or you want to build so laboratories. When it goes through the technical vetting, we issue you approval in principle. That is like license to go and start. We have approved what you want to do. We want you to go and start. You go and start the due process and award contracts.
Do you have an M&E mechanism where maybe you do follow-ups to ensure that no diversion? For instance, we just spoke about academics who are giving a scholarship to study maybe in the US. They divert and go to some other countries. You have rejected that now. Now, a situation where maybe I'm a VC, I say I want to do an amphitheater for mass communication students, and when the money is released, I use it for some other project. Do you have cases like that?
Yeah, I think we have about one of the best M&E model in the country, and perhaps the evidence of this is that we don't have abandoned projects. It is almost impossible to go into any campus of a university, polytechnic, or college of education to see an abandoned project that is being financed by TED Fund. And this is because we employ what we call the PID model of funding, Performance Index Disbursement. The performance of your institution in terms of utilization will determine the disbursement that we are going to make. Irrespective of that, we have given you approval to do this project because we are monitoring how the project is going on. We visit a project at least 5 times in the lifespan of the project. 5 times we visit the project to assess its performance, to monitor and to ensure that what we have given approval of is what is being put on ground in terms of quantity, in terms of quality, in terms of utility, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of everything. We have to ensure that what is the approval given is what you are implementing, and we visit a project at least 5 times.
What about maybe facilities that have what we call wear and tear?
Yeah.
How is that monitored? For instance, TED Fund intervened in the provision of vehicles, and I call it the lifespan of after 4 years. Those vehicles maybe are no more motorable. What happens to them?
You see, we have some 15 different pockets of interventions, and one of them is TED Fund project maintenance intervention. Each year, we give all beneficiary institutions certain amount of money on equality basis, certain amount of money to be used to maintain TED Fund projects. And that is what takes care of the wear and tear that you are referring to. We try to see that whatever project we have put in place, we're also providing some little amount of money to be used to maintain that project. We are returning to the M&E model that we are employing. You see, once we have given you approval in principle, we expect you to do the due process and request for the release of first tranche. We issue the first tranche when we are satisfied that you have complied with the provision of the Procurement Act 2007. Once we release first tranche, we're going to pay the first visit. When you finish utilizing the first tranche, you're going to apply for second tranche. Then you write to us. We will go and see whether you have reached 50%, because what you're going to release to you as first tranche is 50%. We're not going to release the entire money to you at once. We will release 50%. And for you to finish using 50%, we visit you twice. When you finish using it, we release the second tranche of 35%, and we will visit you also twice. When you write to us requesting for the final tranche, you meet the requirement, we release the final tranche. After the final tranche, we will also have to visit you to ensure that the project is completed.
So no cases of variations are not allowed?
You see variation that's another point of strength for our intervention agency. From the word go, the contract that the institution is going to enter into with its vendor, there is no variation clause. We don't allow, because we want our projects to be executed within the project cycle of 12 months. Within 12 months, we are not going to allow any variation, because once you allow variation, no project will be completed.
All projects are tied within a calendar period of 12 months.
All projects have a lifespan, have a project cycle of 12 months, from commencement to commissioning, 12 months. And if you say if we allow variation, then it means, believe me, no project will be completed.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
Yes.
If I decide to say, okay, let me do an independent vox pop about TED Fund, headed by you currently, from the time you took off, precisely you talked about, is it September 2016?
August.
August 2016, and now I say, okay, let me do a search on you.
Yeah.
To a polytechnic, to a college of education, and to a university.
Yeah.
And I said, do you think they will say you are doing very well?
Well,
do you think so?
Well, they are in the best position to give
no, given what you just told me.
That answer. Well, I'm very much satisfied as a person with the little effort that we are putting in place at TETFAN. I'm very much satisfied with the results that we are getting at TETFAN, and I'm very much satisfied with the cooperation and support that we are enjoying from the entire stakeholder family of TET beneficiary institutions, Federal Inland Revenue Services, the Accountant General, the CBN, all the stakeholders that we are working together with to pursue these intervention activities. I'm very much at peace and very happy with the relationship and with the successes that we are recording. And so I'm so much happy how almost everyone really queue into the changes, the improvements that we have brought to bear on the operations of our activities in TETFAN, especially as they relate to intervention.
So what
activities.
if you discover what you uncovered happens again? What happens?
The law will take its course.
Okay.
We will still apply the same principles.
Okay.
We will correct it. And if there are people that are deserving of disciplinary measures, they will be disciplined.
So what
there are people
that
are supposed to be prosecuted, they will be prosecuted.
Okay. What will you be telling institutions, for instance? Now we hear some institutions have cabals of how to break the rackets within TETFAN. What message will you give them so that they don't think about this anymore?
Well, I'm not sure beneficiary institutions are trying deliberately to subvert our processes. Okay. I don't want to think any head of institution will want deliberately come forward to do something sinister to undermine, because the number one beneficiary of our activities are the institutions themselves.
Okay.
And the students that they train, and the teachers that are working there, and the other staff that are working there, they're the number one beneficiaries. So if anybody will go underground to attempt to subvert or to undermine what we are doing, I think they are the ones that will lose. So I don't want to believe that any institution now will be doing anything sinister, anything shifty.
I don't know if my records are correct. I hear that a group has been on your neck to reject the law to accommodate the private institutions. Is that possible?
Well, the agitation and the lobby to...
Was it true?
Yeah, it is true.
Okay.
The agitation and the lobby to amend TETFAN Act so that so many other institutions, including private institutions, can benefit from TETFAN intervention has been going on for a very long time. But the law is the law. At the moment, the law has provided us with a list, literally a list of who are the beneficiaries of TETFAN intervention. And that list is all public universities, whether they are owned by federal government or state government or local government, all public polytechnics and all public colleges of education. Anything outside that is illegal as far as the law is concerned at the moment. But I must also add that I am not in support of amending the law to accommodate any private institution, because if you go to the history of the establishment of TETFAN, it was established to solve a problem. And that problem was the rot and the decay in our tertiary education system. And the intention then, during the military government, was to introduce fees, charge student fees, and solve this problem. And then the union that was negotiating with government over this problem offered the suggestion that institute an education tax so that this problem can be solved. And government accepted the proposal, and ETF was established then, Education Trust Fund, which metamorphosed into Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TETFAN. So if education tax is being collected to stop government from charging tuition fees, why will a tuition fee charging institution, private institution, request to benefit from TETFAN? I think it defeats the essence. And that's why we don't want, even contemplate allocating this intervention to private universities. Any tuition fee charging institution is not deserving of TETFAN intervention. And added to this, let me also use this opportunity to talking about the education tax. The tax collection has been undulating, or rather going up and down because of so many factors. One of the factors that we discovered recently is that very small percentage of the registered company in Nigeria are paying education tax. I have to thank most sincerely the new chairman of Federal Inland Revenue Service for a very revolutionary approach to bringing in so many companies into the tax net.
So the prospects are high.
At the last assessment we did, there are over 2 million registered companies in Nigeria.
So there's hope that the
over
prospects
2
are
million
high.
registered companies in Nigeria, but only about 100,000 are paying education tax. Less than 5% of the registered company in Nigeria are paying education tax. What if 50% are paying? We're going to get a lot of money that is going to revolutionize infrastructure provisioning in our education system, that will revolutionize training, that will revolutionize the entire education provisioning at the tertiary level. But at the moment, less than 5% of the registered companies in Nigeria are paying tax. Believe me, the improvement came with the new chairman of the FIRS. It was only 44,000 companies that were paying.
What word of reassurance do you have for Nigerians as we tie up this segment?
I will want reassure the Nigerian public in general, but especially the beneficiary institutions of Tertiary Education Trust Fund, that the commitment of the President Muhammadu Buhari administration to change the fortune of tertiary education institutions will remain unwavered. We're going to pursue that commitment to ensure that essential infrastructure for teaching and learning will be beyond adequate, more than adequate in our institution. We believe that the vehicle, education as a vehicle, has drivers, and the drivers of this vehicle are the teachers. We are going to pursue the training of these teachers maximally, optimally, and to the highest level of quality during the tenure of this administration.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdullahi Bichi Bafa,
My pleasure.
Executive Secretary, Tertiary Education Trust Fund. It was nice talking to you on the Insight.
My pleasure. Thank you for